Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Metropolitan Branch Trail, Blair Road to Piney Branch Road public meeting. We're going to give everybody just a couple more minutes to start to filter into the virtual meeting, and then we'll get started shortly. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm going to get started here as looks like we have a good number of people in the room. So my name is Michael Alvino. I'm a bicycle and pedestrian program specialist with the District Department of Transportation. And this is the Metropolitan Branch Trail, Blair Road to Piney Branch Road virtual workshop. So we're very excited to have you here and share this information with you tonight. We'll go ahead and get started with the agenda. This is the first public meeting for this project. We expect we'll have several more as we work through the design of this project. So you're just getting started. So we'll start off with some project team introductions and then cover the project background and purpose. And we'll go into some of the design alternatives that we're going to be looking at. We'll allow some time for questions and answers. And then for the last 30 minutes or so of the meeting, we're going to move into breakout sessions where you'll have a chance to look at some of the design alternatives in greater detail. And we'll explain how that's going to work when the time comes for that. So we're very excited about that. And then we'll all come back together and do a wrap up and talk about next steps. Again, my name is Michael Alvino. I will be the project manager for this project. I'm a bicycle and pedestrian program specialist with the District Department of Transportation. And we've assembled a team on this project with support of DDOT. My colleague Samer Al-Hawamde is going to be the project engineer for this project, and my colleague Yvonne Thelwell, also an engineer, a supervisory engineer in our infrastructure project management division. We have George Branyan, who is the active transportation manager. Molly Burns with DDOT's information technology group. She's helping us run this meeting, and you'll be hearing from her as we talk about some of the capabilities of WebEx. Cynthia Tercios is our community engagement specialist for Ward 4. She'll be on board to help deal with all things DDOT and Ward 4. And then we've got some support from our consultant project team who's going to be leading the design on this project. Our project manager, Charlie Alexander from Farron Piers, Anjali Tapia, also from Farron Piers, and Mike Gifford from the team of RK&K. So again, this will be a virtual meeting. So thank you all for joining us. If this is your first time at a WebEx meeting, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public. This recording and the video will be made available on our website, metbranchtrail.com, and on DDOT's YouTube channel within the next 7 days. This meeting is also being live streamed to DDOT's Facebook page. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not ask to speak. You may enter any question into the Q&A or comments into the chat, which we will review in the next few slides. If you need technical support during this meeting, please call 202-309-3491. For this WebEx meeting, we'll cover the audio and video. Everyone is on mute. You cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during the question and answer and comment period. This will help ensure that the meeting runs smoothly and that there are no disruptions during the presentation. To request to speak, you will need to use the raise hand feature, which we will cover shortly. For this meeting, if you have a question, we will be using the Q&A function. To send a question, you can click the three-dot icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and select Q&A. New panel or window will appear, and you can ask your question. Just make sure that the all co-hosts is selected. Type your question into the text box and press the enter key to send it. We will do our best to answer these questions as they come up. And we will, if we can't get to it as a simple question or we need to explain our answer, we'll cover that during the Q&A period. If you'd like to speak, to ask your question or comment, you can raise your hand. This indicates to us at the project team that you'd like to speak. To virtually raise your hand, press the participants icon in the bottom right of the WebEx window, hover your cursor next to your name and click the raise hand icon. Alternatively, you can press Control-Shift-R on your keyboard. If you've joined by a browser or mobile app, you can click the three-dot icon and select raise hand. If you're calling in by phone, you can press *3 to use the raise hand function. A little bit later on, we'll be moving to breakout sessions. We'll cover this again before we go to the breakout sessions, but you will see a link when it's time to the available breakout sessions in the participants panel on the right side of your WebEx window. To join the breakout session, click participants, and then you'll have to click show all breakout sessions at the top of the panel. And you'll be able to view a list of the available breakout sessions. You can click join next to the name of the session you would like to join. You can freely join or leave any breakout session, and the chat within the breakout session will only be available within that session. So your comments will be limited to those people in the session. If you have a comment during the presentation, you can share it via the chat feature. You can select chat in the bottom right of the WebEx window. A new panel or window will appear. In the send to field, select all panelists. You can type your comment in the text box and press the enter key to send it. At any time during this meeting, you can adjust your layout, hovering your cursor between the video feed and the presentation. You can drag the slider bar to adjust the size of the stage window or close any of the panels to maximize space for the presentation. And that covers our introduction to WebEx. So we appreciate you participating in this format, and we'll move into the presentation now. So a little bit briefly, I want to talk about the vision at DDOT. We are guided by our long-range transportation plan, MOVE DC, and really focusing on 4 goal areas of our vision, and that is safety, mobility, sustainability, and creating enjoyable spaces. And this project that you're going to hear about tonight, the Metropolitan Branch Trail, really covers these 4 areas. For safety, Vision Zero is a driving factor, goal of ours to eliminate traffic fatalities in the district as a matter of policy and vision. And this project is really about increasing safety in this area and separating pedestrians and bicyclists where possible. For context, this project, the Metropolitan Branch Trail that you're going to be hearing about, is an element of the Capitol Trail Network. This is a planned network of over 850 miles of trails throughout the region that will connect to the Capitol Crescent Trail and the Anacostia River Trail eventually. And it's an important transportation route that connects neighborhoods, connects resources, education centers, parks, green spaces, and is really a regional vision that we're working on with our partners in the other jurisdictions, Montgomery, Prince George's, Arlington County, as well as the National Park Service. And it's really a vision that will connect these areas and open spaces for people of all ages and abilities. I do want to provide a little bit of background on other phases of the Metropolitan Branch Trail. The one you're going to hear about tonight is Blair Road to Piney Branch. But in case you weren't able to attend our meeting last week, which was on the Fort Totten to Tacoma section, I'll just give a little bit of a brief overview on where the other phases of the Metropolitan Branch Trail are in development. The Metropolitan Branch Trail has been in development for many years here in the district, and it's been built and implemented in phases. And we currently have, in addition to the phase we're going to talk about tonight, 4 other phases that I wanted to just provide an update on. The first one is Brookland to Fort Totten. This is down near the Fort Totten Metro Station. If you've been by there on the train recently, you might have seen all the construction activity. That project is currently in construction and it is planned to be completed by the end of this month. So we're very excited about that and do plan on it opening to the public next month in January of 2022. So we're very excited about that. There is a separate project website for that project, metbranchtrail-forttotten.com. You can go there for all the construction updates and see pictures of the progress that they've made. Fort Totten to Tacoma, we're currently nearing 100% design. We held a public meeting on this last week to provide the 100% design update. Those materials are available on our website, metbranchtrail.com. And that project is planned to go to construction next summer or fall of 2022. We're also planning a future off-street trail alignment in the Manor Park neighborhood, where we're planning to conduct a future environmental assessment between Riggs Road and Oglethorpe Street Northeast. And then lastly, in the Tacoma area, earlier this year, we completed construction of a section of trail along Eastern Avenue between Piney Branch Road and Baltimore Avenue near the DC Maryland line. As I mentioned before, the Met Branch Trail has been developed over time, over about the past 20 years, since the vision really started at the grassroots level with the Friends of the Metropolitan Branch Trail, with the idea to turn the former Metropolitan branch of the B&O Railroad into a rail trail. Early planning started for it in the late 1990s. And in the early 2000s, the District Department of Transportation developed a concept plan that established the route alignment. In phases, construction was started in 2004 with the New York Avenue Metro. And then between New York Avenue and Franklin Street in 2010, environmental assessment was completed. Excuse me. A little bit later than that in 2012. And now we're looking at the next phase from the next and final phase from Blair Road to Piney Branch Road. I'm going to turn it over to our project manager, Charlie Alexander.
Great, thanks, Michael. Can you just give me a thumbs up that my audio is working okay? Great, thank you. So to dive in to greater detail on the segment that we're looking at tonight, Michael provided some information about the recent or nearing completion of the Brookland to Fort Totten segment and the design progress on the Fort Totten to Tacoma section. So this segment from the Fort Totten segment to the Eastern Avenue segment is really what fills the gap and helps complete the Metro Branch Trail. In this image on the left, you can see at the very top, the green segment is the segment that we're talking about tonight from Blair Road to Piney Branch Road. Anticipated timeline. So the current phase of design that we're in is called preliminary design. And I'll explain some of the things that we're looking at as a part of the preliminary design in just a moment. We're aiming to have that wrapped up sometime in 2022. And from there, go into final design, which is basically, all of the construction documents necessary to get this on the ground. Construction, we're anticipating some point in 2024 or 2025, based on where we are Just walk you through our process and schedule for preliminary design. Um, Starting at the top here, what we need to complete is some level of our alternatives analysis. And we've been working on that for the past several months. That's the focus of our meeting this evening. And we aim to have that wrapped up in April of 2022. And I'll explain the various alternatives and the different areas where those alternatives would apply here just in a moment. Once we get to April of this year, we will have developed a preferred alternative or recommended a preferred alternative based on some technical information as well as feedback that we hear from the community. And once we have that recommended alternative, we will move into preliminary design, actually starting to lay that out so we know exactly what it will look like, finishing sometime mid-year 2022. A couple other tasks that we need to be doing throughout the duration of our project and preliminary design is all the environmental investigation and review to make sure that we understand whether or not there will be environmental impacts associated with the project. If so, what can be done to mitigate those impacts, etc. And then lastly, there are two properties that are a part of this segment that are actually owned by WMATA. So it's a pretty long process that we've already started on. Of the right-of-way tasks necessary to acquire those WMATA properties. WMATA is aware of that and has been aware of that of some time. So that'll take some time beyond the preliminary design tasks themselves. At some point, while the environmental investigation tasks are ongoing and the right-of-way tasks are ongoing, we plan to move from preliminary design into final at a time to be determined. So the project purpose and the purpose of our meeting tonight is to discuss the development and analysis of alternatives for what we're calling subsegments of the Metro Branch Trail from Piney Branch Road to Blair Road. So what's potentially unique about this segment is that to fill this gap from the Fort Totten segment to the Eastern Avenue segment, we really need to use a combination of both on-street facilities as well as off-street trails to make a seamless connection for people using the trail from north to south or south to north. So the map on the right here shows, the overall alignment that we're looking at with the, the Eastern Ave Trail on the north and the Fort Totten segment to the south, and all the various options and segments that have been proposed for the Met Branch Trail through the Tacoma area. Starting at the north end, there's a short segment on Piney Branch Road. Segment 2 connects from Piney Branch Road up to Chestnut Street. This is on the impacted WMATA properties. Segment 3 will actually be on Chestnut Street. Segment 4 on Spring Place. Segment 5 is in between 343 Cedar Street and the WMATA rail line. And then segment 6 is generally from Cedar Street down to Blair Road. And what you can see about segments 1 through 5 is that we generally know the alignment for those. What's potentially unique about segment 6 is that we need to understand not only the different facility types, different bikeway types for the streets that we're looking at, but there's also some options as to what streets we could actually use to connect over to Blair Road, and we'll describe that here more in a moment. So just to walk everyone through these streets and areas in pictures and give you a sense of what some of these segments are. Segment 1 is Piney Branch Road. This is a picture just west of the WMATA tracks looking to the northeast, and shows the pretty wide sidewalk on the south side, as well as the protected bike lanes that DDOT installed, think earlier in 2021, that have been in place for several months now. From there, the trail will connect up to Chestnut Street, going up this embankment to connect from Piney Branch Road to Chestnut Street. And this embankment and the land that this picture was taken from is part of the property owned by WMATA currently. And this is a picture taken from that property looking to the north at Piney Branch Road. Once we connect from those WMATA properties, the trail will follow Chestnut Street for a short segment. Chestnut Street had some very nice street improvements installed, relatively recently with sidewalks and curb and gutter. And you can see a picture of what Chestnut Street typically looks like here. This is taken, I believe, from Spring Place looking to the east towards those WMATA properties. From Chestnut Street, it'll turn down Spring Place. Spring Place is a local street that functions a little bit more like an alley, and has some currently designated spaces for people walking and biking. So in all likelihood, those would probably be reconfigured in some capacity to make this environment a little bit more user-friendly and more seamless for people walking, biking, and driving as well. From Spring Place, the trail would use this sort of existing informal trail that is between 343 Cedar Street and the WMATA rail. This is a picture taken east of 343 Cedar looking to the north. And from here, it would connect down to Cedar Street itself. From Cedar Street, it would use 4th Street to go to the south. This is a picture of 4th Street from Butternut Street looking to the north. DDOT recently did some work here to add, let's see, on the right side, a northbound bike lane while retaining the parallel parking on the east side and then the back and angled parking on the west side. And this is currently configured for one-way travel southbound for this block. And then some point, south of 4th Street, we need to connect over to Blair Road. There's a few different streets where this is an option, including Aspen Street, Whittier Street, or Van Buren Street. All of these streets, I guess Aspen's a little bit busier because it goes underneath the WMATA rail. Whittier and Van Buren are more on the quiet side, frankly. And this picture on the right is sort of a typical, image of streets in this area of Whittier Street looking to the west. Generally residential on-street parking, no particular markings or designations on the street itself, and then sidewalk on either side. And in a lot of blocks, these are residential. On some, there's a little bit of commercial, and then obviously on this picture that we've got in Whittier, the park on the south side of Whittier, excuse me. So those are generally the different subsegments we're looking at. And I want to introduce really quickly the different types of facilities that we might be matching with some of these subsegments to create that complete Tacoma section of the Metro Branch Trail. So starting first with the multi-use path, this is really, I think, what people envision when they imagine the Met Branch Trail. This is something that is designated and really enables multiple recreation or transportation modes, walking, biking, skating, different forms of mobility devices. This picture we have here is an example from Atlanta, but obviously, as Michael indicated, there are many, many trails or multi-use paths in the DC, in the district, and in the region at large that would potentially tie into this. So that's one option, multi-use path. A second option here is a protected bike lane. So this is more of an in-street bikeway, but exclusively designated for people biking, but located within or next to a street. Distinct from the sidewalk in that, it's a different level from people walking. So you can see this image here where, the protected bike lane is in the street, but different from the sidewalk to the left of the image. And then also notable for having some level of protection or vertical barrier between the vehicular or the travel lanes to the right in this photo and the bikeway itself. So let's see, Bike Boulevard and neighborhood bikeways. So this is an on-street bikeway that is really composed of a low-speed street that's really optimized for bike traffic in a neighborhood. So, a lot of the streets that, in the district and many of us maybe that we grew up riding on are, relatively quiet neighborhood streets where there's not a lot of traffic. Traffic moves pretty slowly, and in general, it can be pretty comfortable to just ride in the street with the relatively low volumes and low speeds. So a neighborhood bikeway or a bike boulevard really sort of takes that idea and intentionally builds out a network or a street that's intended to be a bikeway. So sometimes we need to do things to manage the amount of volume on a street. Sometimes we need to do things to manage the speeds that traffic moves at. Those are all things that we can do. There's some tools in the toolbox. But when we do those things with intention and we try to, do so in a way that creates a bike network, we're doing that with a bike boulevard or a neighborhood bikeway. They're a little bit different from what is called a Woonerf or a living street, which is really a Dutch idea that we've started to do more and more in the United States and other places in North America, where we're generally sort of redesignating a street as a community space and a public space. And while we do that, it's designed in a way that really accommodates easy biking and walking, but also creates a sense of place and doesn't generally distinguish between the area for people driving, the area for people walking, and the area for people biking. So these streets tend to have slower streets, minimal signage, no street markings to sort of create that shared environment that you see in this pictorial example from the Netherlands. And then lastly, two more options here. The first is bike lanes. So this is, when we say bike lane, this is what a lot of people imagine. So this is an exclusive bikeway located next to a street, distinct from the sidewalk, but only separated from traffic by paint on the asphalt. These can be done with, with a wider stripe to increase the distance between the travel lane and the bike lane, or it can be done sort of minimally, as is shown in this picture here. But in the intention here is that people driving and people biking are sort of always in a separated space. The example on the right is what we call an advisory bike lane. And what is unique about an advisory bike lane is that the bike lanes in this case are actually identified with a dashed line. And there's in the middle, instead of two travel lanes, there's really only one shared lane where traffic in both directions has to yield to one another and, as appropriate, merge into the bike lane when the bike lane is clear to get around each other. The easiest way that I thought of describing this is it's sort of like a very old narrow bridge where traffic can only enter from one direction at a time, except with bike lanes next to it. So you'll see where we are considering these in some of the segments as a part of the project. So obviously, as I mentioned, the purpose of our tasks currently and of our charter over the next few months are to arrive at a preferred or recommended alternative for the alignment and the facility types of the Met Branch Trail between Piney Branch Road and Blair Road. The community input that we get tonight is going to be really helpful for moving towards that recommended alternative. We're also doing a variety of technical analyses to understand measures of effectiveness of all of these different options. This is just a sampling of the different things that we're looking at from an engineering and planning standpoint, things like understanding how comfortable these different options are going to be for different users, how safe they're going to be, how direct the route will be in different options, and how many times somebody using the route is going to have to stop if they're trying to make a continuous trip along the Met Branch Trail. It's sort of a proxy for safety, trying to understand what conflicts there will be with driveways in the area as well as bus stops. And then also wanting to understand the impact to vehicles moving through the area. Will alternatives increase the amount of delay? Will they increase the amount of queuing at intersections, and particularly signalized intersections in the area? I saw a question come up that we'll take in Q&A here in a minute about whether or not there will be on-street parking impacts. So that's something that we are quantifying as a part of this effort. Some of the options in some segments do, many don't, many are somewhere in between. So we can talk about that more in the breakout rooms. Also looking at right-of-way. In most cases, we're staying in the existing right-of-way, but in a couple of the subsegments, we do need to go into right-of-way or easements that are there to complete the trail. And then some sort of nuts and bolts on the engineering side that we want to make sure, this is a feasible project when we get to a recommended alternative. Understanding the cost, how is it going to be constructed? How is it going to be maintained down the road? And then all the things both above the ground and below the ground from a utility perspective that the project may affect that we need to be aware of. So we've been looking at all these things. We'll be reporting out on some of these things on a high level tonight with the time we've got available, and also considering them alongside the community input as we move to develop a recommended alternative. So in a moment, well, actually, what we're going to do here is take a break for questions and answers in general about the projects. And then we're going to have everyone select a breakout room for about 30 minutes or so at the end. And the purpose of the breakout rooms is really to do a deep dive on some of these segments and understand the options that we're considering, the pros and cons of those different options, get your feedback on which options you like, which options you don't like, why you do or don't like different options, and maybe things that we should know as a design team from your local experience and boots on the ground from being in the neighborhood. So the best way to do this, it's with the number of segments and number of options, it's pretty impossible to go through all of these with the whole group tonight. So we thought the best way to do it would be to divide it into 3 different breakout rooms from north to south. So I'll give instructions on this again in a moment, but breakout room 1 will be the segments 1, 2, and 3. So Piney Branch Road to Chestnut Street, and then Chestnut Street at the northern limits of the project. Breakout room 2 will be Spring Place and 343 Cedar Street, so segments 4 and 5. And then breakout room number 3 will be all of the on-street options from 4th Street to Blair Road. So 4th Street, Aspen Street, Whittier Street, and Van Buren Street will be breakout room 3. So you don't need to memorize that right now. I will reiterate that in a moment before we have you select your breakout rooms. But before we get into the instructions for the breakout rooms and get into the breakout rooms themselves, we wanted to open it up for questions and answers. We've got maybe about 20 or 25 minutes or so, Michael, I believe, for questions and answers. And Molly is going to monitor folks who raise their hands and want to ask a question over the phone here. And then Anjali is going to be monitoring the chat and the text chat and adding in questions as well. So Michael, if that timing sounds good, then I'll hand it over to Molly and Anjali to facilitate the Q&A here.
Yes, that sounds good. Thanks, Charlie. So I do see a couple questions that have popped up in the chat. Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, so one question from Evan Yeats asks, previous renderings showed a bike bridge that crossed Piney Branch Road. Is that still being considered?
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Yeah, in the early 2000s concept plan for the Met Branch Trail, there was a proposed pedestrian bike bridge over Piney Branch. That's not something that we're looking at in this project. I think really our intent is to bring the pedestrians and bicyclists down from that hill to Piney Branch and cross at the intersection of Piney Branch and Eastern.
Another question from the chat here before we go to raised hands. Jason asks, is there a reason you didn't mention a one-way street with a contraflow bike lane? That approach has been very successful here on 8th Street and it works well with the narrow roadway.
Thanks, Jason, for that question. I'll kick that question over to you, Charlie. Can you talk maybe about a one-way street with a contraflow bike lane?
Yeah, and I will go just for to try to minimize engineering jargon. I will just give everyone an idea of what's being described there. So what Jason's describing, a contraflow bike lane, is what is actually currently in place on 4th Street from Cedar to Butternut. So on that block, there is one-way traffic southbound and then a contraflow bike lane northbound. So Jason, no, I guess the direct answer to your question is obviously a contraflow bike lane is sort of a nuance of a protected bike lane or a nuance of a bike lane. So it's certainly something we've considered. If you choose to join the third breakout room for segment 6, which looks at 4th Street, we're looking at some options that would add two-way protected bike lanes in this area, which are sort of the most suitable for addressing some of the contraflow questions that you raise. And then there's also elements of a contraflow bike lane on segment 1 on Piney Branch Road. So not necessarily something we didn't consider, just sort of a nuance of design that I didn't include in the presentation, I guess, for the sake of brevity.
Great. How about we go to some of the hands that were raised, and then we'll come back to the chat for some more questions.
Yes, so Linda, I'm sending you a request to unmute now.
Okay, there I am. Good evening. Michael, just a short comment. You know, the alignment is something that I have been asking people to look at for more than 20 years. And when I first met you, you promised me that you would take a look at the Western alignment. So right now, I really want to say thank you for keeping that promise. What I saw today said that you actually did consider that. And there were two reasons for that. Straight down Eastern Avenue between Piney Branch and Cedar had a different impact on people who lived there. But the Western alignment, we always argued that stretch of the trail that DC residents could access, the accessibility was greater there, and it really did service DC residents in a positive way. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking us seriously on that and really putting the Western alignment into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, I remember that promise. So we haven't forgotten. So we're not there yet. So thanks for
I know.
this process.
I know.
We'll work through this.
Okay.
All right, our next hand is Jeff.
Hello. My question is very much related to Linda's. And I guess sort of on the flip side, with any of the West alignment options that are ultimately selected, will you also contemplate East alignment improvements? Just acknowledging that there will be a lot of people who will be entering from that side of the trail as well. And so I just wanted to ask that question and see what you had to say about it.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, for the Eastern alignment, you know, I'll say it's not off the table. You know, the alignment as it was established in the concept plan is still there, but it's just something that, you know, we're pursuing this Western alignment now because we think, you know, there's a real opportunity to finish the trail, at least, you know, north-south and make this connection. So this is the side that, you know, we've prioritized at this moment in time. But if there's interest in the Eastern alignment, you know, it does have a lot of challenges, as Linda mentioned, not just because of the impacts, but just, you know, some of the geometry of the turns particularly the one from Maple to Carroll Street that was in the alignment that was identified in the concept plan, are just tricky, to be honest. So it's not off the table. It's just, you know, our focus right now is on this western alignment.
All right, and then now we have Beth. Beth, you should see a request on your screen to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, that was a user error on my part. I got confused about what was raising a hand and not raising a hand, so I will, I don't actually need to have a comment. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. So I will pass it back over to Anjali with the chat questions.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Robert Patton has a couple of questions about the design along Piney Branch. First, he's asking, how can you address the wing wall of the bridge at Cedar Street, just west of the metro station entrance? And then will you cross under the railroad at Piney Branch on the north or south side of the street?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Let's take those questions in two parts. The first one regarding the wing wall of the metro retaining wall at Cedar Street. It's something we've looked at preliminarily with engineers and with WMATA. That we do think it's structurally feasible. I'll kick it over to our design engineer, Mike Gifford, who might better be able to respond to that. But it will be a big focus of our design. And then we'll come back to the second question about Piney Branch.
Okay, yes. As Michael mentioned, we've been looking at that. It is one of those situations where there will be a modification to that wing wall that will be needed. What we're looking at as far as the design is that we would be putting in a retaining wall along the side of our trail that would then go down and intersect with the existing wing wall. That new retaining wall would then, with that tie-in, would then allow us to kind of cut off and pull back where that existing wing wall is to open up the space for the trail.
And if you're more interested in that, you'll want to be in breakout room number 2. Coming back to the question about Piney Branch, we would be looking at coming down the south side of Piney Branch, and we have a couple different options for reconfiguring the bike lanes or the sidewalk on Piney Branch between the grassy hill and the intersection of Piney Branch and Eastern.
So one more question from the chat here from Tanya. You mentioned that the property at the trestle at Piney Branch is owned by WMATA. This property had been for sale, so they didn't sell it. Can you provide an update on that, Michael?
Yes, you know, not speaking on behalf of WMATA, but you know, our understanding is that, you know, that property was for sale and remains for sale. There's a big sign with the real estate agent's name up on it. At one point in time, there was a deadline. You know, they were asking for offers. My understanding is that they did not get any offers, or at least any offers that they thought provided them fair market value. WMATA, you know, is a quasi-federal agency, and they were required to sell their properties at fair market value. And so, you know, we, DDOT being a transportation agency that receives federal funding, when we purchase property, we're also required to purchase it at fair market value. So we've expressed an interest in purchasing this property from WMATA. It's one of the reasons that we've prioritized this segment, because we do see, you know, that there is a risk there of someone else coming in and purchasing it. But it is our intent. We have funding set aside to make that purchase. We've have an understanding with WMATA. They're aware of our project and our interest to complete that purchase. But you know, there are, you know, both of us being federal agencies, there are a lot of steps that we have to go through before we can enter into that final purchase.
So Molly, I'll turn it back over to you if there are any other hands raised or from the Q&A.
So we do not have any other raised hands at this moment. Reminder, if you've dialed in directly, you can press *3 if you would like to raise your hand to ask a question. There are a couple questions in the Q&A. Beth asked, at Aspen Street, is the plan to still have the trail go east there as in the currently planned segment, or will the connection replace that so the trail stays on the west side of the tracks? Sorry if this was answered. I joined a couple minutes late.
Yeah. If I understand the question correctly, after the trail in the Fort Todd to Tacoma section will come up Blair Road and then turn to the east on Aspen Street and go up Sandy Spring to Maple. That is still part of the plan for that project and is moving forward. So that would allow people who live on the east side of the tracks to access the trail and get onto the trail at Aspen Street or Sandy Spring. But this project would sort of supplement that and be on the west side of the tracks to provide that link on the west side. So it would be both.
Next question is Becky. Can you cover what is going to happen at the intersection of Aspen and Blair? There is a huge number of accidents and a lot of traffic there.
We're not going to focus on that intersection tonight. We did spend some time talking about that intersection at the meeting last week in the Fort Todd to Tacoma section. So you can check out those materials at metbranchtrail.com. I'll just say sort of briefly, what our plan is for that intersection in the other project is, to remove a lane of traffic from northbound Blair Road to construct the trail and do some reconfiguration of the traffic signals there. We do think that will be a safety benefit to remove that one lane of traffic, which will sort of alleviate some of the weaving that happens on northbound Blair Road. I understand that there are other considerations at Aspen and Blair, and as some of the options that we're going to be looking at are weighing the benefits of using Aspen Street versus Whittier versus Van Buren. If you join one of the breakouts and you're interested in that, I would join the breakout number 3 for that.
Next, we have Adele's question. How and who will be conducting traffic studies? There is a lot of traffic in this area around 5 p.m.
Sure. We will be conducting traffic analyses, especially where we're proposing changes to any of the signalized intersections. I can turn that over to Charlie maybe to talk a little bit about what goes into the traffic analysis that you'll be conducting.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's a good question. The short answer is yes, we will be conducting traffic studies. Those will include an assessment of the afternoon commute hour as well as the morning commute hour. We've collected traffic counts at multiple intersections. I think maybe a dozen or so intersections in the area, including some of the ones that are more on the busy side, like Cedar and Fourth and Blair. So we are doing a traffic study. We're doing that through a variety of industry accepted methods, looking at things like delay for vehicles, queuing for vehicles, travel time, etc., which is consistent with DDOT practice, and that's something that this team is doing.
I just want to add on the traffic studies, one of the things that we factor into that is projected future growth. So that is based on a regional land use model that is factoring in additional population growth, down to the project area, but also regionally in other areas. So it sort of does look at the cumulative impacts of our decisions and how they might look in the future.
We have one last question in the Q&A here. Rick asked, for the part of the plan that could go down 4th Street, has there been any consideration given to taking away some of the parking spots? I hope not. It's not heavily trafficked like Aspen.
So there's a couple different alternatives that we're going to propose in the breakout groups for 4th Street. Some of them do propose removing some of the parking there. Some of them preserve the parking, and so you'll be able to weigh in on those concepts there.
We
And
actually,
Michael, that's breakout room 3 for 4th Street, and yeah, no, none of the concepts proposed yet, but for the alternatives we're considering, yeah, some take parking, some don't.
we just got one raised hand. Ron, I will send you a request to unmute.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so we were asking about parking on Chestnut Street. Well, are we going to lose parking on Chestnut Street? That's, we're just concerned about that. We asked that question twice and it wasn't answered.
I'm sorry about that. I don't believe any of the concepts or alternatives that we're proposing for Chestnut Street remove any parking. Can you comment on that, Charlie?
Yeah, Michael's correct, and thanks for raising your hand to get that answered. Yeah, if you in breakout room 1, we'll talk about Chestnut, and the option for Chestnut would not remove on-street parking. Sometimes when we're looking at neighborhood bikeway options or bike boulevard options, which is what's proposed for Chestnut, we will hear from neighbors and say, oh, it's really hard to see when I'm turning on to Chestnut, say from Spring. And maybe there's one parking space that is blocking sightline. So, sometimes if the neighborhood is concerned, or if there's like a sight distance or safety issue, a space or 2 may be removed to make things safer, but we're not looking at a wholesale change to the parking configuration on Chestnut.
Well, to remove parking, we have that apartment building that was put in place maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And they weren't provide parking spaces. Now they park in the neighborhood because when they put the apartment up, we were promised that they would have parking and they didn't. So if you remove 2 or 3 parking spaces, there's 2 or 3 parking spaces for the residents that live on Chestnut Street. That's being taken away by the residents on Spring Street. And now we can't even cut over to 4th Street because that was taken away from us also. 1st Street,
Yep.
rather.
Understood. Yeah, we're not trying to, if there's not a safety concern that the community mentions, then that's not something that we would propose to do. I was just trying to sort of convey the full range of options we sometimes hear in projects like these.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will pass it back over to Anjali with the chat questions.
Great, thanks. So we have a question from Jason. Have you thought about how any of these options might connect to an east-west route toward Walter Reed? Currently, the only east-west bike route is Butternut, and it has bike lanes only part of the way, is a major thoroughfare for Metro buses, Greyhound buses, and patient commuters, etc. With all the new construction and bike infrastructure coming in at Walter Reed and the Met Branch Trail, it's important to have a link.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Jason. Yeah, it's not something that's being studied or proposed as part of this project, but we're definitely aware, and that that could be a factor in sort of the determination on some of those east-west routes. But that is something we've heard a lot about from this ANC and the neighborhood is that desire for east-west connections, particularly between the trail and Walter Reed. And I think we have about enough time for one more question, and then we should move into the breakout groups. I will add that the transcript of the chat and the Q&A will be available on our website, and if we don't get to your question, we'll try to follow up to that by the website. And then I'll mention that after the breakout groups as well, we'll have two options for you to provide comments. We have our Title VI form, which we'll talk about at the end of the meeting, but we'll also be doing a more in-depth survey of all the options. So, if you get a chance to go to one breakout room tonight, but not all of them, then you'll have a chance to look at all the concepts or the alternatives that we're proposing and provide your comments to those by a survey after the meeting.
So Michael, you said one more question from the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. So Bradley's asked a question that's pretty specific. I'm going to encourage Bradley to choose the breakout. I think his question on gradient on the trail will be answered in one of the breakout sessions. And so instead, Julie Lawson asked, do traffic counts include people moving outside of cars, bikes, pedestrians, kids on scooters, etc.?
Thanks for that question, Julie. I'll defer that one to Charlie to talk about how those other modes of transportation outside of cars are evaluated in the traffic study.
Yep, short answer here, yes. The traffic counts include people walking, people biking. We don't necessarily differentiate for people of different ages walking or biking. It's sort of qualitatively difficult to do that when we're collecting that data in the field to know, is somebody, for instance, a senior, or is somebody a child versus a teenager versus an adult. But we do get people walking, people biking, or any other mode that they're using when we collect that data. So Michael, in the interest of time, I can explain the breakout sessions, if that's where you want to go.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, very good. So just a quick reminder, so be thinking about which breakout group you'd like to pick for your preferred segment. Just a quick reminder, let me see, here in a moment, I will put a slide back up that shows, actually, no, I won't. So let me remind everyone. Breakout group 1 is segments 1, 2, and 3, Piney Branch Road, Chestnut Street, and the connection from Piney Branch Road to Chestnut Street. Breakout room 2 is Spring Place and 343 Cedar Street. And then breakout room 3 is 4th Street, Aspen Street, Whittier Street, and Van Buren Street. So I'll give instructions about what that's going to look like here in a moment. We'll walk you through the different alternatives for each of the segments, some of the pros and cons associated with those alternatives, and ask you to chime in with some feedback as to how you feel about the different alternatives, what you think of some of the pros and cons, and different ideas you might have about improving those alternatives. So one thing to note, we want everyone to be able to provide feedback on every segment, recognizing that there's not enough time to do that for all the segments tonight. We have created a survey for all of the other alternatives. /Maybe Molly or Anjali can copy the link and drop it in the chat here. That is bit.ly/MBT Tacoma. So if you enter that into a web browser, it should take you straight to our survey where you can basically do the same exercise as we're doing this evening for all the segments. And then that link is also available at the overall Met Branch Trail website, which is metbranchtrail.com. Thank you, Anjali. I see that just went into the chat. And then just a couple, actually, Michael, could you do this again about the instructions for the breakout sessions and how people are going to join them since you did it before?
Yes, absolutely. So in a minute, when the breakout sessions begin, you'll see a link to the available sessions in the participants panel on the right side of the WebEx window. So if you go and click on participants, and you'll be able to click on show all breakout sessions at the top of that panel. And a pop-up window will appear, which will allow you to view a list of all the available breakout sessions. As Charlie just mentioned, there will be 3. And then you can click join next to the name of the session you would like to join. Once you're there, you can come and go as you please. We encourage you to stay and participate and share your feedback. It is going to take us a while to go through each of the alternatives. So don't necessarily hop around from room to room, but you're welcome to do so. But please stay and provide your comments there. And then you'll be able to chat and then unmute and speak and share your comments with each of the facilitators in the breakout sessions.
Great, thanks, Michael. So I'll have Molly launch that in just a minute. I did forget, just because we'll do the breakouts for about 25 minutes here and then do a short wrap up at the end. For anyone unable to stay around to the end, I did just want to show the survey on the screen here. Michael, can you give me a thumbs up that it is visible on the screen? Great, thank you. So if you want to provide feedback on all the segments, that survey that Anjali dropped in the chat gives the same background that we're talking about tonight. And then it'll give you an opportunity to pick a particular segment of the trail. I'm just going to pick segment 1, Piney Branch Road, and go to next. And it'll go through all of the options, the pros and cons we're walking through tonight, and then ask for your indication of support or not supporting of the alternative and any other feedback you've got. Once you finish a segment, it'll give you the option to provide feedback on other segments if you want. So that's how you could potentially look, at another segment if that's what you want to do. So we tried to make it user friendly and such that people can provide as much feedback as they want on any of the segments. And with that, I will let Molly go ahead and launch the mechanism for the breakout rooms.
The breakout sessions are now open, so feel free to switch over to your rooms. Charlie, you're probably just gonna have to stop sharing your screen. Just a heads up. And I will be staying here in case anyone has any questions.
Molly, if you're there as the DDOT host, can you confirm that all the breakout rooms have made it back to us?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, very good. Well, why don't I share my screen then and we'll wrap up. We're over time here. So Michael and I will just give a quick wrap up and identify next steps, and then we will send everyone to be on their way for the evening. Just get my screen shared. Okay, so sounds like there was robust discussion and some really helpful questions and feedback in the different breakout rooms. Thank you so much for participating in those. If you do want to take our survey for the other alternatives, you can get to it at bit.ly/MBT Tacoma. That's also available at metbranchtrail.com. Our next public meeting will be in May of next year. So we're hoping, well, not hoping, our plan by that time is that we will have a recommended alternative and some amount of preferred design ready for that recommended alternative. And we'll be rolling that out to the community in May. If you've got any other questions or want to contact a member of the team about the project, you can do that by emailing metbranchtrail@dc.gov. I'll hand it over to Michael to go through Title VI, but we'll just say that we're grateful for everyone's time, really value your feedback and contributions to the meeting this evening, and look forward to seeing you in May.
Thanks, Charlie. And thanks to everyone. I just want to echo Charlie's comments. This was my first experience doing a public meeting with breakout rooms. So thank you for everyone who made it work so well. When we started trying to figure out how we were going to do this meeting, I think if it was in person, a classic, it would have been an open house. You could have gone and walked around and talked to everybody, gotten the information. It's a little harder to do that in a virtual environment, but I think we managed to do that tonight. Our last slide of the night for Title VI, as a recipient of federal assistance, DDOT must ensure that all its programs and activities and public meetings are conducted in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ensures non-discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. This questionnaire is being used to help DDOT ensure that we are informing the public and conducting our meetings in a non-discriminatory manner in compliance with Title VI. So I'll put this link, rebrand.ly MBT Tacoma-comments. I'll put that link in the chat. Those comments will also go to us. You'll be able to just put in open-ended comments and also your demographic information as well. And with that, I think we will send you all back to your evening. So thank you all on behalf of DDOT and on behalf of the project team and the Met Branch Trail. Again, take the survey, fill out the Title VI form, and there will be more information to come on this project. So